Hi there. For more than a century now, Clemson University has existed as a small agrarian college nestled deep in the heart of South Carolina. Noted as a college of cultural pride, Southern tradition, and discreet fraternal hazing, Clemson has seen the passing of many distinguished presidents. All of these men have been strong, ambitious male archetypes with a firm rooting in American tradition as well as scholastic achievements. Men such as John C. Calhoun, Dr. Robert Poole, Constantine Curis, R.C. Edwards, and of course, Danny Ford. These men spend their careers in the campus limelight under constant scrutiny of students, faculty, and alumni. However, one man has managed to remain hidden from this orange spotlight, a man whose private life has borne unto him a secret mythology of untold power and formidable feats. With only oral tradition and local folklore as a guide, our camera crew went on a journey to uncover the truth about this man. I'm Ben Kearns, and this is Legends of Barker. With little known about Barker's past, we dug deep to uncover the origin of this pursuit of excellence. As the records in Cooper Library indicated, as a child, Barker excelled in everything he attempted. For instance, he was the lead diver of his diving team, first string point guard for the Smallsville Indians, the lead guitarist of his church's house band, and the reigning champion of the Tiny Model Home Builders Club. Once out of school, Barker realized his abilities transcended his small-town environment and decided to attend a college to challenge his intellect as well as set him on a course for bigger and greater things. Instead, he attended Clemson University. At Clemson, he made history by becoming the first student to graduate, get married, and be made university president all in one semester. To get a better idea of what Barker is like today, we went to the congested heart of Clemson campus, the Cooper Library Bridge, and asked students what they knew about their president.
He does a lot of top 20 stuff, so I hear him talking about that a lot. Nice man. Met him once. He's a very respectable guy.
Poignant,
Well-dressed.
honorable, unflappable.
I guess he's probably a good president because he has a commanding appearance.
He's got a nice X5. I've heard he's just a mysterious kind of man. Never really around a lot. Just don't really know that much about him.
He's a pretty good guy, I guess. I've heard some pretty crazy stories about him. Like apparently he was in Vietnam and he like saved a platoon of like 50 men or something like that and like killed like 300 combatants and pretty crazy stuff. It's pretty impressive.
Each Clemson student gets one favor from him in their 4 years at Clemson. It can be as big as you want or as small as you want. I think he'll do it for you.
President Barker, he was the one that killed like 100 bears in 1 year or something like that.
As we interviewed students on the bridge, we noticed an odd reoccurrence of stories that dabbled in the realm of the supernatural. It was unspoken, but our camera crew began to suspect that something bigger was lying in waiting under the serene surface of Barker's public persona. A couple days after the interviews, we were contacted by a local fisherman. At first he was hesitant to do an interview with us, but upon commencing the interview, we learned that he had the very insight that we were looking for.
Yeah, I remember as clear as it was yesterday. I was out here fishing on Hartwell, just throwing my line around, seeing what would happen. And walking down the shore, and I look up and I see some frat boys pulling up their pontoon. They throw their anchor over and break out the keg and the loud music. And, I figured they're gonna mess up my fishing, so I start walking down the shore. All of a sudden I hear all this hollering going around. I turn around and they're all running around their boat screaming. I figured they're just taking one of the paddles at each other, so I just kept on walking. And then I look up and I see the boat's going under, and they're screaming, "Help, help, we can't swim." So I'm sitting there thinking, what can I do to help these boys? I don't have my John boat or anything, so I start screaming for help. And all of a sudden, this man starts coming out of the woods up here, and then he gets down the shoreline, he says, "I'm here to help." He sticks his hands up in the air, and he says, "Part." All of a sudden, the lake splits in half. This man walks clear out in the middle of the lake on the dry lake bed, sticks his hand out, picks his pontoon up, carries it back in one hand, sets it down the shoreline, and says, "Frat boys, you have a good day." And then starts walking up the woods. So I holler out, hey, who are you?" And he says, "I'm James F. Barker."
After Mr. Lott came forward with his story, our satellite headquarters in Riggs Hall was soon flooded with phone calls from other locals who also lay claim to witnessing Barker and his heroic acts. One case we found particularly interesting was from a foreign exchange student named Miss Elizabeth May, and a very fortunate occurrence on Bowman Field.
So one day I was walking to class in Bowman Field, and I was running a little bit late, so I looked down to see what time it is. I looked down and my watch isn't there. So I looked over at Tillman to see if I could see the time, and it was blocked by the trees. So I looked around to see if I could ask anyone. And then I saw Barker standing there, staring at the sun. And I asked him what time it was, and he said nothing. He just stared at me and kind of grunted. And he ran over to this tree that used to be there, and he pulled it out of the ground and slammed it down in front of me, and he said, "There's your sundial."
As time went on and stories continued flowing into our headquarters, it became hard to discern between the stories we wanted to keep for the film and the ones we wanted to omit. However, one of the final interviews we did stand out in the fact that Barker, instead of helping someone else, actually was helping himself.
Riding my horse the other evening along this trail. Got right in here. Noticed this sharply dressed gentleman engraving into this rock wearing a three-piece suit. Didn't know who it was at first, but when I came up on him, I realized it was President James F. Barker. We began to talk for a minute, and he asked me if I'd be interested in taking up a horse race with him. I said, "Sure, President Barker, but I don't see your horse around here." He said, "No problem." Gave out a whistle. Good bit louder than that, actually. And his white stallion comes jumping through the woods. So I was like, all right. We mounted up and began to race. No sooner than we began, I noticed he was so far ahead of me I couldn't see him. Finally, I caught up to him laying on the ground. He had cut his leg open on some barbed wire. I mean, a big gash all the way from the bottom of his boot to his knee, very deep. And I started panicking, thinking we needed to get him to a hospital pretty soon. He said, "No problem, I am the hospital." Not knowing exactly what that meant, he grabbed a twig, yanked the horsehair out of the horse's tail, stitched the thing back up, pulling his leg back together. So we mounted back up again and continued the race. Naturally, he won. At the end of the race, I wanted to look at his leg to make sure it was fine and figure out what we needed to do to finish doctoring it up. It was healed completely, no scars.
As our investigation drew to a close and we surveyed the mountains of personal testimony we had accumulated, our camera crew realized that we had reached a crossroads. Is President Barker the mild-mannered, somewhat reclusive president of a soon-to-be top 20 university? Or is he the man some people say has substituted himself in for James Davis mid-game to score winning points? Is he the thoughtful, charismatic man whom faculty quietly whisper about? Or is he the man rumored to stand atop Tillman Hall surveying the campus armed only by his trained Peregrine Falcon? Barker will never admit to any of these allegations, and so it stands to you as the audience to determine whether or not you believe in the legends of Barker.